Do you know the biggest mistake people make while learning VBA? They think like a normal Excel user instead of thinking like a Excel programmer. So in this video, we'll understand the concept of VBA, how VBA as a language works. So let's get started. All right, so this part of this video is super important and you're not allowed to skip this. Now let me take an example to make you understand that what kind of language VBA is. So let's say if you have to ask me to kick a ball, the normal English you will be using kick the ball. Now this is the plain language that we use in our daily life. Now in these three words, kick is the process that I need to perform and ball is the object on which that process will be performed. Now when it comes to VBA, and if I have to write a code to kick a ball, the code will be ball.kick. Now both of these languages, both of these wordings means the same, but in VBA there is a total difference of how we write a language. So VBA is a object oriented language where you need to specify the object first. Like here we have used the ball and then we use the kick. So first comes the object and then the process. So whenever you need to do something through a VBA code, you need to specify the object first and then you need to specify the process, the activity you want to perform. For example, if I want to make a cell value bold, the first thing I need to do is I need to specify the cell and then I need to specify the bold activity. So the point is VBA is an object oriented language, and to write a code in VBA, first thing you need to specify is the object and then you need to specify the process, the activity you want to perform. Now what happens is when you want to write codes in any language, you need to have an application where you can write those codes. In technical language, we call them editors. So if you have a friend who write codes, you can ask them, they must be using a kind of editor to write their codes. Now here we already have that application inbuilt in Excel. You don't need to install that application again. You just need to activate that application and you will be able to write the code in that. So first thing is to activate the developer tab to get that application. So for this, I'll go to the file tab and then click on more and then options. And from options, I will go to customize ribbon. Now from this customize ribbon, I will tick mark developer tab. So I want to have developer tab on the ribbon and then I'll click OK. So I have this developer tab here, and when I click on this, I get these bunch of options here. Right now, you simply need to focus on the Visual Basic Editor. So Visual Basic Editor is that application which we use to write codes in Excel. So here is that Visual Basic Editor. I need to click on it to open it, or I can also use Alt plus F11, the keyboard shortcut, to open it. Now in this Visual Basic Editor, we need to understand quite a few things before we start writing a code. Now on the left side of this window, we have the Project Explorer, which actually tells us the structure of our workbook. So right now I have the sheet 1, the only sheet in my workbook, and it shows this sheet 1 here. And now if I insert one more workbook, a new workbook here, and then if I go to the Visual Basic Editor, it gives me the same structure of the workbook. Now if I try to insert a new sheet in the book 1, you can see it has automatically updated that structure for you. So now you have sheet 1, sheet 2, and then this workbook in the structure. Now the next thing is to insert a module. So I want to write codes in book 1. So what I will do, I'll go to insert. So I'll click on module to insert a new module. Now the moment I click on new module, it shows me a window on the right side, which actually is the window where you write the code. So this is where you write all the codes in Excel. Now the point is, when you write a code in this module, it will stay there in the same workbook. You don't need to save them separately. It will stay with the file where you write the code. Now the next point to understand that when you write a code, when you write a VBA code in Excel, you need to save that Excel file in a specific format. And that format is called XLSM. So let's say if I want to save this file as a macro enabled workbook, I'll go to File, Save As, Browse, and here I will change the format from Excel workbook to Excel macro enabled workbook. So this is how you save your file where you have codes as a macro enabled workbook. Right, so now I want to write a code that can apply 4 formatting in one go. Now these formattings are, I want to apply bold to this text in the cell, and then I want to apply the red color to the font to the text, and then third one I want to apply the yellow color to the cell, and the fourth is I want to apply this middle alignment to the text or the value that we have in the cell. So these are the 4 formattings that I want to apply. So now I'll open my Visual Basic editor and start writing this code. So the first thing I will do, I'll specify the range A1, and then so the first the formatting that I want to apply is the bold. So I'll specify the font property, and further I'll use the bold property and say it's true. Range A1 dot font dot bold equals to true. Now again A1 dot, the second thing that I want to do is I want to apply the red color to the font. So I'll go again font dot color equals to VB red. So this is a constant that tells VBA to use the red color. Now third formatting, again I'll specify the cell A1, and then I'll refer to the interior that allows us to specify the color for the cell. So basically the cell color, I'll use VP yellow, and now the last I'm going to use is vertical alignment equals to cell middle. It was Excel center, not Excel middle, so I have corrected this. So now I need to improve this code a little bit. So what I want to apply this formatting on any cell that I have selected. So instead of using a range, a specific cell, I'll use the keyword selection that refers to the cell or the range of cell that I have selected. So I'll remove A1 and use selection here. Now if I try to select multiple cells and run this code, so it applies all those formattings to all the cells or a range or multiple cells that I've selected. The next thing that I need to do is I need to restructure this code in a better way. So for this I'll use the with statement and specify selection here. So in this way by using with statement, I'm telling VBA that I want to refer to selection in one go. I don't want to use selection or my reference again and again for all the codes or for all the lines of code that I have written here. So I'll use with selection, and here I'll use end with. So when I start with selection here and use end with here, so it tells VBA that all the lines of the code that I have written between this statement refers to the selection. So I'll delete this selection keyword from here. And let me a little bit restructure this. Okay, so it says with selection dot font dot bold equals to true, dot font dot color equals to VB red, dot interior dot color equals to VB yellow, and then vertical alignment equals to Excel center, and end with statement. And now if I rerun this code, it applies all these formattings on all the cells that I have selected. So whenever you want to write a code, you need to note down all the steps and all the activities that you want to perform with that code, and then you need to start writing your code. Now at this point you have a code that we have just written. The next thing is to enable the macros. The point is, when you write a code and you save it in your Excel file, and then you save that Excel file as a macro enabled workbook, you still need to enable macros in Excel, because Excel will not allow you to run a code unless you enable those macros. I'll go to the File tab, and then I'll go to More and Options. Now after that, I'll go to the Trust Center, and then I'll open the Trust Center settings. Now as you can see, the macro setting that is right now in my Excel is disable VBA macros without notification. So I'll change it to disable VBA macros with notification. So this will help me to secure my Excel for not running any harmful VBA code, but it will still give me a notification that if I want to enable macros for a particular file or not. So when I click on this and then click OK, and then click OK and come back to my Excel file. Now here I have a file on my desktop which is macro enabled, and when I try to open this file, it gives me a security warning that macros have been disabled, and here's the button that I can click on to enable the macros. So in this way you can enable macros in a particular file, and you can also have that security to not to run any code without your consent. Now when you click, it activates the macro for this particular file. Now the next important thing is to understand that how we can run a particular macro or a VBA code in Excel, how you can execute that code without opening the Visual Basic Editor. Now the point is, when you go to the Developer tab, and here you can see this button called macros, and when you click on it, it gives you the list of all the macros that you have right now in the workbook. Let's suppose if I want to apply formatting that we have just written in our code, I'll select the cell and select the macro that I want to run, and then I use the run button. So this way I can run a macro from the list of macros. Now the second way is to create a button that we can use to run a macro. So this button is quite useful if you have a macro which you want to use frequently in your Excel file. So for this, what I will do, I'll go to Insert tab, and in Illustrations I'll go to the Shapes, and from here I'll insert a button. You can also add any shape you want, but here I will use a button because I want to create I want to create something that looks like a button. And then I'll add a small text here.
I'll change the size of this button and a little tweak in the color. So now what I need to do is I need to right click on this shape, so this button, and then go to the assign macro. When I click on assign macro, it again opens that, the list of macros, and from here I'll select apply formatting, that is the code that I want to run from, with this button, and click OK. Now I can execute that code, that macro, with this button. Now the moment you hover on this, this button, it allows you to click on it. So for example, if I want to apply formatting on this cell, select the cell. Now I'll click on this button. Yes, that's it. You can also add a button on your quick access toolbar for the macro that you want to run. So for this, I'll go to the more commands, and then from here choose commands from, I'll select the macros. And here again I have list of all the macros that I have right now in my workbook. I'll select the first, apply formatting, that I want to add to the quick access toolbar, and then I'll click add, and then I'll change the icon so that I can identify on which button I need to click, and then I click OK, and then OK. So here I have that macro, that button to execute that particular macro. Now if I click on this button that says apply formatting, so yes, this runs that code, that macro that I've just assigned to this button. Now we will look at top 3 objects that you will be using more frequent in VBA than anything else. And we will also learn how we can use properties, methods with an object to perform activities and to automate our tasks in Excel. Alright, so let's try to use the workbooks object. Now in my code window, I'll type workbooks, and then I need to enter a starting parenthesis and then a double quotation mark, and now I need to specify the name of the workbook to which I want to refer. So right now the sample book VBA is opened. That's the current workbook that I have right now, so I'll use the same name. Then again, after the name, I'll use double quotation marks and the closing parenthesis. Now this way you can refer to any workbook with that workbook's name. Now what happens is, when you specify to a workbook as an object, it comes with some properties and methods that you can use to perform an activity with that workbook. So when I type a dot, it gives me a long list of properties and methods. Now to identify which one is a property and which one is a method, you can refer to this small icon. So where you have this small green brick, it's a method, and where you have this gray hand, it's a property. So now let's suppose if I want to save this workbook, I'll use the save method. Either you can type it, or if you don't know the method, you can just scroll down to the list and select. So here we have this workbook as an object, and this is our method as the process, as the activity that we need to perform. And now if I run this code, and when I run this code, it simply saves that file. Now in the same way, if I want to close this workbook, I'll use the close method, And when I run this code, it simply closes that workbook. So in this way, you can use a property or a method that comes with that object. Now to refer to a sheet, to a worksheet, there are two different ways to do that. The first is to use the sheets object, then the starting parenthesis, double quotation marks, and then the name of the sheet that I want to refer to. And now I'll again enter the double quotation marks and the closing parenthesis. Now if I want to activate the sheet 2, so right now the sheet 1 is active and I want to activate the sheet 2 now. So I'll use dot activate. Second way to refer to a sheet is to use the worksheets object. Now both of these objects are same, but there is a slight difference between those. So when you use worksheets, you are only referring to a worksheet where you have cells, rows and columns. But when you use sheets, you are also referring to a chart sheet. So if you want to refer to a chart sheet instead of a normal worksheet, you need to use the sheets object. But in most of the cases where you're dealing with worksheets where you have columns and rows, you simply need to use worksheets object and then you need to use the name of the sheet. Now, if I run this code, it activates the sheet 2. Now in the same way, I can also use the index number of the sheet to refer to it. So for example, if I want to refer to the sheet 3, which is on the third number in my workbook, I'll simply use the index number 3. And now if I run this code, so it activates the worksheet 3 that is on the third position in my workbook. So if you want to refer to a cell or a range, you need to use the range object and again the starting parenthesis, double quotation mark, and now here you need to specify the address of the cell or the range to which you want to refer. So if I want to refer to the range A1 to A10, I'll use A1 to A10 address and then I'll close the parenthesis, and now again I'll type dot, and now I'll press dot to get the list of all the methods in the property. Now what I want here, I want to select this range, so I'll use the select method. And now if I run this code, it simply selects the range A1 to A10. Now in the same way, if I want to copy this range, I'll use the copy method and then run the code. And in the same way, if I want to refer to a single cell, I'll simply use the cell's address. And now if I want to enter a value in the cell B1, I'll use the value property, and by using the equal sign, I'll specify the value or the text that I want to insert. And now if I run this code, it enters the value hello in the B1. Now there's one more way to refer to a cell or a range, that's by using the cells property. So now when you use, so it asks you for the row and column index of the cell that you want to refer. So if I want to refer to the cell C5, that means the column 3 and row 5. So I'll use this address as row 5 and column 3. And now if I use select and run this code, it selects the cell C5. Alright, so in this part, we will learn how to copy and paste values using a VBA code. So here in the range A1 to A11, I have few values that I want to paste to the range C1 to C11. So for this, first of all, I'll specify the source range from where I want to copy the values. And then I'll use the copy method. Now if I run this small line of code, it simply copies the range A1 to A11. Now the next thing is I want to paste these values to the range C1 to C11. So for this, again, I will use the range object, and then I'll specify the range C1 to C11. So this line of code tells VBA to take range A1 to A11 and copy it and then paste it to the range C1 to C11. And now if I run this code, now when you're specifying the destination range, you can also use the single cell, the first cell of the range. Like if I'm trying to copy values from A1 to A11 and try to paste it on the range C1, it will simply take all the values and paste it to the range C1 to C11. So if I run this code where I have, specified the destination range as a single cell C1, so it will take all the values and paste it through C1 to C11. Now the next thing is to use the paste special option that we normally use in our Excel worksheet. So for this, you simply need to specify the source range. So here we have A1 to A11, and then you need to use the copy method. So this is the same way to copy values, but to paste a value by using a paste special option, you need to use the range object again, and then you need to specify the destination range, and then you need to type a dot, and from here you need to use the paste special method. And now as soon as you type paste special and then enter a space, it shows you all the option that comes under the paste special option, and which you can select. You have paste formats, paste formulas and number formats, and paste values. So from here I'm going to use paste values because I want to paste only values to the range C1 to C11. And now if I run this code, so it takes values from the range A1 to A11 and paste it to the C1 to C11, only values, not formatting. So if I want to take only formats, so formatting from the range A1 to A11 and paste it to the C1 to C11. So I'll use XL paste formats. So let me delete these values first. And now if I run this code, so it takes formatting from the source range and paste that formatting, only formatting, to the destination range. Alright, so this part of this video is quite interesting. So we'll learn how we can use the Excel functions in a VBA code. So for this, first thing that you need to use is the application object. So when you use this application object, you are actually referring to the entire Excel application. And after that, you need to enter a dot. So this again gives you a list of all the methods and properties. And from this list, you need to use the worksheet function. So when you use this worksheet function, it gives you an access to all the functions that you have in Excel, and you can use those functions in a VBA code. And now I need to press a dot again. And as soon as I press a dot, it gives me a list with all the functions that we normally use in a worksheet. So let's say if I want to sum values for the range A1 to A11, I'll simply use the sum function. So as you can see, we have sum, if, sum ifs, sum product, all sort of functions that we use in our Excel worksheet. And then I need to enter a starting parenthesis.
Now here's one thing that you need to note down and need to take care all the time. When you use a function in a VBA code, it shows you that you need to define, a few arguments to calculate that, result value, but it will not show you the name of the arguments. Now, if I come back to the Excel worksheet and try to use some function here, it shows me that I need to specify numbers in the argument. But when I use this function in a VBA code, it shows me that arguments needs to be there, but it will not show me type of the argument or type of the value that I need to specify in the argument. So you need to have an idea that what sort of argument you need to define in this function. So here I know that I need to specify a range. So I'll use the range and I'll specify A1 to A11. Oops. So this is that small line of code that actually sum values from the range A1 to A11. Now the next thing is I need to have this result somewhere. I need to have this result in a cell or a range. So for this, I'll specify a cell to get this result. So what I have done here, I have specified the value, the result coming from this line of code to the range C1. Now, if I run this code, it sums all the values from this range and return and enter the result in the cell C1. Now, let's say if I want to calculate average instead of sum, I'll simply go back and after worksheet function, I'll enter a dot and this gives me the list of all the functions, and I'll type average and again I'll specify the range and I'll change the destination cell from here. And now if I run this code, it gives me the average of all the values from the range A1 to A11 in the cell D1. So you need to use the application object first, and then you need to use the worksheet function to get a list of all the functions that you can use from Excel worksheet in a VBA code. All right, so now we'll learn how we can use a message box in VBA to show a message to the user. So the first thing is to enter the message box function. So for this, you need to type MSGBOX. So that's the name of the message box function. And then you need to specify a few arguments. So in message box, there are more than 5 arguments, but out of those 5, 3 are important that you will be using more frequently than other 2. So the first is prompt. That is the actual message that you want to show to the user. So let's say if I want to add a message hello. So the next is to the type of the buttons that you want to show in the message box. So I'll use VB OK cancel. That means it will show 2 buttons, OK and cancel. And after that is the title. That's the title you will get on the title of the message box, title bar. I'll use the same hello. All right, so now if I run this code, it shows me a message box with a message hello, and on the title again it's hello. And as I said, we have 2 buttons, OK and cancel. Now let's come back and try to change the type of the buttons. Right, so we'll go with yes, no, cancel. That means 3 buttons, yes, no and cancel. All right, so let me run this code. So the message is here, the title is here, and we have 3 buttons, yes, no and cancel. And when
a user clicks on any of the button, even OK or yes, no, cancel, whatever, it generates a response. So for example, if I run this code and here I have 3 buttons, yes, no, cancel, and if I click on cancel, so there will be a response to that message box that will return. So you can also get that response in a cell. So for example, if I want to get the response in the cell A1, and now if I run this code, it shows me the message box with the same message, same title, and 3 buttons. And when I click any of these 3 buttons, I'll get a response in the cell A1. And mind you, this response will be in a numeric value. So if I click on no, so the numeric value is 7. That's actually the response by clicking on that particular button. So in this way, you can identify that user has clicked on which button. So these are the response codes that you'll get when a user click on a specific button. So if user clicks on OK, so there'll be a 1 value in the response, and in the same way for each button there is a response value that you can get in a cell, or you can store in a cell to understand that which button the user has clicked. You can also create an input box in Excel using a VBA code, so that input box can be used to get a response from the user, an actual response. It's like an input bar where user can enter something and you can store that value or that response in a cell. So for this, first of all, we'll try to create an input box. So for input box, you need to enter the input box function and then enter a starting parenthesis. Now here we have 2 major arguments that we need to define. That's prompt, title. So prompt is the message that you want to show on the user form. So let's suppose if I want to ask the user for the first name and then title. So there is no. So here we also have a few more arguments: default, expose, ypos, help file context. But you can learn more about all the arguments from this specific video that I have on input box. But for now, we'll use only these 2 arguments. All right, so when I run this code, it shows me an input box where title is enter name, and in the main part of the input box, there is a message that says enter your first name only. Now there are 2 buttons, OK and cancel. Now if I enter my name here and click OK, this input box closes. But now what I want to get this response, that the response of the name in a cell. So what I will do, I'll assign a cell, and now if I run this code, it shows me the same input box, and when I enter my name and click OK, I get that value in the cell that I have specified. So in this way, you can get a response in terms of answer from the user and save that response in a cell. Now in this part of this video, we'll discuss 2 most important habits that you need to develop if you want to get better in VBA. So the first habit is to testify your codes before actually using them or before actually sharing them with someone else. And the second is to add comments in your codes to refer to a particular section or to explain how this particular code actually works and how to edit and change that code. Now in Visual Basic Editor, there is a button called Step Into that you can use to execute your code line by line. And if somehow you don't have this toolbar, you can go to the View and then Toolbars and click on Debug to get this toolbar in your Visual Basic Editor. Now what I will do, I'll click anywhere in the code, then I'll execute this code line by line using this Step Into button. And you can also use the shortcut key F8. So you need to press the shortcut key, or you can press this Step Into button. So I'll use this button from here. So right now I'm at the very beginning of the code, and now on the width selection line,
Now you can see in the cell A1 that the moment I jump from one line to another, it will perform that activity, that particular line of code step by step. So I'll press step into again, and now as you can see, the red color is applied on the text in the cell A1. Now we have the cell color yellow on the cell A1, and now if I go to the third line, it made the cell text bold, and now I have the last line of code that's making the text vertically alignment into center. All right, so we have this text aligned vertically into center. So this is how you test your code before using it or actually sharing it with someone. This is very important habit to make, as soon as you start using VBA to write codes. Now, adding a comment in a code is as important as writing a VBA code. Now, what happens is when you writing a code and you want to share it with someone, you can add a comment to explain that how you have written this code, or if there is any important thing that anyone who's trying to edit that code or trying to make any changes code needs to take care. There's one more benefit of using comments. This is very useful while writing your codes or while testing your codes. Now, for example, if we want to exclude a line of code from the execution, you just want to exclude it for testing, or just want to exclude it for temporary basis. So instead of deleting or removing that line of code from the actual code, you can simply convert it into a comment, and VBA will ignore it and take it as a comment and will not execute it while executing the main code. And if you want to get or use that line of code back, you can simply remove the apostrophe from this line, and this line will again work as an actual line of code. Now, the difference between constant and variable, as name suggests, that in a constant you can save a value, but you cannot change that value after that. But in a variable, you can save a value and you can also change that value if you want. So we'll take an example to understand that what is a constant or what is a variable, right? So let's suppose if I want to save my date of birth, which is a fixed date, so I will not change my date of birth, so I'll use a constant. So for this, first thing that I need to use is I need to use this const keyword, and then I'll actually name this constant. So I'll need to type or enter the name of the constant. Now the next thing is I need to use the keyword as, and after that it shows me a list from where I need to specify the type of the value that I want to save in this constant. So as it's a date, so I'll take date and then I'll save it, and then I'll use the equal sign, and now I'll use 0 1 0 1 1 1990. So that's my date of birth. So now let's suppose if I want to use this date of birth, my date of birth, in anywhere in the code, I don't need to type the date again and again. I will simply use this constant, my birth, wherever I want to use it. So let's suppose if I want to use a message box to show the date, I'll simply use my birth constant, and now if I run this code, it shows me the date which I have specified. Or if I want to enter this date in a cell, again I'll use the constant. So here I have that date. Now the point is, you need to use the const keyword, and then you need to specify the name of the constant, and then the keyword as, and after that you need to specify the type of the data that you want to save in the constant. So if you want to save a text, so you'll use the string data type, and then you'll enter the value that you want to save in the constant. So in the description, I have shared a link that you can go through to understand data types that you can use in VBA. Right, so now we'll try to understand what is a variable and how to use a variable in your code. Now, as name suggests, variable is something that, in which you can change the value. So to declare a variable, you need to use the dim statement, dim, and then you need to specify the name of the variable. And again, you need to specify the keyword as, and after that, the data type of the value that you want to store in the variable. So for example, if I want to store a number, so I'll go with integer. I'll use the variable name and then equal sign, and I'll specify the number. Let me use a message box to show this variable. So number from the variable. Now, as I said, we can change the value from a variable. So if I want to change it, I'll go here and I'll again use the variable name and assign a new value to it. So here in this code, I have declared a variable by using its name and then the data type. And then, so I have assigned a value to this variable and then use the message box to get the value of this variable in the message box. And again, I have assigned a different value to the same variable and again, the message box to get this value. And now if I run this code, it shows me the message box with the value that we have in the variable and the first part of the code. And as soon as I click OK, it shows me another message box and the value that we have right now in the variable, which is 2. So the point is you can change the value that you have stored in a variable within a code whenever you want. Writing a VBA code to create a conditional statement is one of the most important part in VBA. So to write a if statement or a conditional statement, you need to start your code with if. And here I want to test a condition. So after if, I need to specify the condition that I want to test. So I'll specify a cell here. And I want to test that if the value in the cell A1 is 1 or not. And then I need to use the keyword then. So if the keyword if and then the condition that you want to test, and after that the keyword then. Now here I need to specify the line of code or lines of code that I want to run if the condition is true. So if the range A1, the cell A1 has value 1, which lines of the code I want to execute by VBA. So here I will mention that line of code equals to yes. So it tells VBA that if the range A1 has value 1, then range B1 equal to yes. So it will add the value yes in the range B1. And now I'll use the keyword else. So else is used to specify alternate lines of code or line of code to run if the condition is not true. So I will say range B1 equals to no. So again, if the condition that we want to test, then keyword, and the line of code that I want to run if the condition is true, and then the else keyword, and the line of code that I want to run if condition is false. Now in the end, I need to use and if keyword to end the statement. That's it. So now if I run this code, it enters the value no in the cell B1 because condition was to test if cell A1 has 1 in it or not. So the condition is false, so that is why it runs this line of code, not this. Now if I enter value 1 in the cell A1 and try to run this code again, it enters the value yes in the B1 because the condition is true now. Now let's suppose if you want to test a condition and then you want to run a line of code, but you don't want to specify a alternate line of code to run if condition is false. You can write your if statement in a single line. So for example, if I want to test if cell A1 has value 1 or not, and if it has that value, I want to add yes in the ifs. I want to add yes in the cell B1, but I don't want to perform any activity and I don't want to run any line of code if condition is false. So in that case, I don't need to use the else statement or and I can write my statement in a single line of code. If, and then the condition that I want to test, then keyword, and the line of code that I want to run. That's it. And now if I try to run this code, so it enters yes in the cell B1, and if I remove 1 here and try to run this code again, so it does nothing because I haven't mentioned any line of code to run if the condition is false. Alright, so that's it for this video, and if you want to learn more, make sure to subscribe to this channel because I'll be coming out with a lot of cool VBA tips and tricks in coming weeks.